Revolutionaries employ tactics with apes. A Latin American haggard decides he hates the government and the world nearly ends. Welcome to Cuba! This is the Cuban Revolution in plain English.
It's Cuba. It's the 19th century. What's in Cuba? Sugar. There's a lot of it. It's so insanely profitable that Spain, of course, forces 400,000 slaves to work for it. In February 1889, the U.S. and Spain blows up in Havana Harbor on the coast of Cuba. Around this time as well, America runs out of space of their own, and they decide they want more! What's on the menu? Cuba, just off the coast of Florida. Cuba's geographical proximity makes it ideal for U.S. occupation. In fact, it's so close to the U.S. that you could theoretically fire a nuclear warhead from Cuba on all American cities. Not like that would happen. But Spain already owns Cuba, so the US points their greedy little fingers to Spain and blame the main on them. The two countries go to war briefly, eventually ending with Spain's surrender and finally a treaty. Cuba becomes occupied by the US, beginning a bosom friendship. In 1902, after decades of cleanliness, America releases Cuba, giving the country formal independence. In 1952, a clique of military officers wants the corrupt government to stop governing, so they ask military General Batista to assist in their exploits. They go off with their oversized hats and initiate a military coup. And it works! Batista becomes the new head honcho, establishing his government, increasing the economy, spreading tourism, and it's just as bad as the last leader. He's corrupted and doesn't care about his people. In the following years, Cuba becomes a racist utopia for white guys and a hellhole for native Cubans.
The 1954 elections come along, except we all know that's not a real election because it's been rigged. Wow, this really sucks, said up-and-coming hotshot human rights lawyer Fidel Castro. So on July 26, 1953, the Latin American haggard and his rebel Boy Scouts go for a raid on Manacata barracks in Cuban city Santiago to steal some weapons. The attack unfortunately was a complete failure, and the rebels got a healthy helping of being shot in the face. The rest got some alone time in a prison cell, including Castro. Unfortunately for Batista, the people loved Castro and his ideas, forcing Batista to release Castro, although he was unwillingly shoved into Mexico in exile. Castro utilizes his time at session for the formation of the rebel group M267. He also met Che Guevara, motorcycling communist revolutionary. In November 1956, Castro and his sweaty friends shipped themselves back to Cuba on a boat called the Grandma, confident for round 2 against the Batista regime.
Things don't go well, though. 3 days after their arrival, Batista attacks and murders 62 out of 81 rebel men. The Boy Scouts retreated, fleeing through the dank jungle at the Sierra Maestra mountain ranges, complete with egregious amounts of foot fungus. However, the new 1954 election farce influenced young Cubans to rise from Batista's rule, setting up the perfect battleground for a revolutionary group to overturn the government.
Later, during 1957, Castro and his rebel group started to launch attacks on Batista's forces. They were not just some random attacks, though. Castro used guerrilla warfare to beat Batista, deploying methods such as ambush, raid, and sabotage. After Castro began gaining additional supporters, Batista decided to send 10,000 soldiers to beat Castro's group of rebels and lead Cuba of opposition, like the dictator he was. The reason Batista was able to use the technological resources tactic was because he was receiving aid from, drumroll please, the U.S. Even though Castro pleaded with them to stop helping Batista, the Americans denied that they were helping, and Batista's plan commenced in the summer of 1958. 10,000 soldiers reached the Sierra Maestra mountain ranges. Rebels' main base of operation was on Batista's orders. Although vastly overpowered, M267 fought furiously and were able to hold out thanks to their savior, guerrilla warfare.
The pivotal point for the revolutionaries was on January 1st, 1959, when Batista abdicated his presidency. 1 day later, the M267 and its army rolled into Havana, the capital of Cuba, victorious, thus ending the tumultuous Cuban Revolution.
Throughout the summer of 1959, Prime Minister Castro works hard on nationalizing all businesses in Cuba, but vehemently denies any acts of being a communist. His actions infuriate the United States, who at this point in history considered communism as a soul-sucking, malevolent demon. The American government began turning on Castro, and when Cuba begins nationalizing U.S.-owned companies, the Eisenhower administration breathes apocalyptic fire and fury. In retaliation, the U.S. does not buy Cuba's sugar quota, causing disastrous damage on the sugar-dependent Cuban economy. In a pivotal moment, Castro turns towards the Soviet Union and China for help. Yep, some of the United States' greatest and most communist enemies. When the USA and Cuba officially sever diplomatic relations, Cuba needs to draw help from other powerful allies, so they start to latch on the arm of the Soviet Union, wishing to join the cool communist clique. Meanwhile, the US, with the burning vengeance of a million imploding supernovas, conjure up a plan to take down Castro. America is really scared because of Cuba's proximity with their country, so they gather up a group of people who dislike Castro and ship them off to the coast of Cuba, called the Bay of Pigs, to attack on April 17, 1961. Things go laughably wrong for the US government. Castro executes nearly all of the US organized counter-revolutionaries, and the Kennedy government faces global humiliation. This, of course, gives Castro's ego an unmeasurable boost. In the summer of 1962, Castro asked friend and premier of Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev, to send some missiles to Cuba for safety purposes. In October of 1962, the US's spy airplane hovering above Cuba captured images of Soviet nuclear equipment, and the government freaks out. The US assumes that the USSR wants to attack from Cuba, so they organize a naval blockade. Cuba, on the other hand, interpret the action as an act of war, and in the following days the world holds its breath as Kennedy, Khrushchev, and Castro attempt to figure out the world's most dramatic misunderstanding. In the end, Khrushchev agrees to dismantle the missiles if the US agrees to never invade Cuba. This event, known as the Cuban Missile Crisis, was also crucial in the history of the world, as many people realize that, really, the world is just ruled by a bunch of hooligans with unlimited power, leading to the creation of regulations. And thus ends the Cuban Revolution and its direct aftermath. What do you think of this event? Thank you for watching.